the Riders Lounge. Mark Fawcett here with Dave Downing. So this guy's super OG. I'm old enough. I remember when you came into play. I remember when you like arrived on tour. I don't know if your first event was like Snow Summit or there was some place. People were talking about you because they were like, this surfer guy. This is the surfer guy.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And they're like, he just started and he's really good.
So it was probably at a race.
Yeah, it was at an event. 100%.
People don't know that. I used to ride a PJ7 and hard boots.
Love it.
I never wore speed suit, but
yeah.
I just did it for fun. I mean,
we had it was like a body glove, or no, it wouldn't have been body glove. PSTA.
PSTA body glove.
Body glove. Yeah.
Yeah, PSTA.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just fun to reminisce and go like really deep into old stuff. But anyway, Dave's been also lifelong Burton rider, tech guy.
Rep. I started as a rep.
You started as a rep?
Yeah.
At the same time you
didn't know that.
At the same time you were competing?
Yeah, probably when I was doing that, probably I was a rep in Southern California. I was working for the main reps down there, Eric Stoops and Janie Smith, and that was in 91.
Oh yeah.
91 to 93. That's when that was going on. Probably.
And you probably did your first competitions in like 92 or 93.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So cool. So let's go back before that. Surf background, and you grew up in SoCal?
Yeah, I grew up in SoCal.
So you were one of those like quintessential like.
I grew up on the beach.
Surfing?
Yeah, my dad had a boat. I was on boats a lot, and my I was just surfing with my friends. I probably started surfing when I was 12 or something like that, And then I thought snowboarding was stupid, for one. Like I remember seeing snowboarding, like I just thought it was dumb. Like they were like crashing, and I skied for like since I was like 10 to 21.
And like Baldy, Snow
Summit.
Summit.
Yeah, Snow Summit, and I'd go on ski trips with people and stuff like that. And when I first started snowboarding, I was actually at a trip in Utah, and I broke my skis on a ski trip. And my really good friend, Don, talked me into renting a snowboard. And I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it at all. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. But I broke my tip of my ski or something like that. And he talked me into renting a snowboard.
I mean, I could see that back in the day. There wasn't a lot you could do on them. They were so low performance.
I just saw like it looked kind of like a circus to me. It looked clumsy,
Yeah.
But then I remember I saw somebody in Utah like ride. I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. And then he talked me into renting a snowboard. And I going down the Groom Run. I remember I went up the what's it called, Little Cloud Bowl or whatever. It's Snowbird.
Yeah.
And I was going along the cataract. I kept falling over. And then I remember it was like snow was 6 inches. And I remember sitting on the cataract with my feet over. Oh God, I'm getting work, And then it was powder, and I stood up and I rode down the powder, and I could ride because it was like surfing.
Yeah.
And it just was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And then
surfing in the lightest density water ever, like
Yeah, from that first run, it just like triggered something in my brain, and I was just super into it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
How long and were you a person when you were a kid even and you used to surf? So
yeah,
predating that.
Yeah.
Did you like have a relationship with like the surfboard shapers, or did you kind of know what you wanted?
The guy that I actually went to Utah with was my surfboard shaper. So
Gotcha.
I wanted to be a pro surfer. That was like my dream, and it didn't work. I sucked at it. So it's like I wanted to be a pro surfer. I looked up to guys like Tom Carroll, and I was like, that was like my dream, And my surfboard shaper, and I was pretty into it. I worked at a surf shop, and I started carrying snowboards, and that's kind of how that happened.
So that. You carried that with you to snowboard.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, cause
I was a surfer that started snowboarding.
Yeah, I'm really jealous of people. I'm really jealous of people that they're like, they get a setup and they're like, yeah, works great, thanks, and they rip on it and they don't have to modify anything. They never complain about it. They don't have sleepless nights thinking about how to make it better.
Surfboard or snowboard?
Both, but realistic, really snowboarders that are just like, yep, works great just as is, thank you. I'll keep it like this for 5 years, and they shred.
Right.
I'm jealous of that because I go to bed every night like, how can I make this better? How can I?
Yeah, but you can ride anything and have a great day.
I can adapt and have a good day and ride it, but I always, I'm like always kind of like the gears are spinning, and I think that's just certain personalities. Like if you were 15 years old and you had a surfboard shaper that you like worked with and were like, no, I want it thinner. No, I think this.
Yeah,
no,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, like surfboards are different though. Everyone's different. So like they're not like snowboards. Like these are kind of all the same, pretty much. You know.
Yeah.
Like I could get a custom 56 and go. You know, I could just grab one out of there and it would be custom 56.
Yeah.
But surfboards are so different. You know, like there's so many things going on with the foil and the rocker and the outline and everything.
There's a few more variables.
It's a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot more variables.
To get a good board, you have to talk with the shaper, and he has to translate what you're feeling to shape to get that surfboard. Like pro surfers, they're crazy now.
They're insane.
They go through hundreds of boards a year just figuring out to get those 5 that actually work. So it's pretty crazy.
And did you pretty quickly do that with snowboards though, from a perspective of like, okay, good, but
that's a good question. I never really thought about that, but yeah, probably because that was probably in my brain from surfing. Like I said, talking to a shaper and stuff, and then I mean, I was a sales rep, like I said before. I was a professional snowboarder, so I understood that there was different models for different things and stuff like that. And I rode a lot of the different boards. I understood them. And then when I started being a pro, it was in '94, really, after I met Shannon, and that's a whole nother story. But anyways, I started riding for Burton, not being a sales rep. And they were in a meeting. I remember being in a meeting, and Jake was really adamant about listening to the riders. He was kind of like, hey, listen to these guys. So they were listening to me, asking me questions like, what do you want? What you do? And I'm a new person on the team or whatever, but I was 25 years old. Yeah. So I was older, way older, and I understood the retail part of things, because I was a rep. So I was looking at it like, oh, let's create a board that's a pro model board, like Carrier's board. Jeff Rushy had these pro level boards, but I wanted a board that didn't have any name on it or anything. And Joe Curtis was involved in it too, and I was a Burton Custom. So that's how that came about. The Burton Custom was we wanted a pro model board, like the base and the materials and all that, but we didn't really want anybody's name on it. It was like a blue collar thing, and we were pretty adamant about not even saying Burton on it. I remember for the first quite a few years, like the first, what is it, the 59 Custom, it just had a red base with the Pegasus horse on the bottom, and then the 55 was like a rainbow with a butterfly. It was just
the only way you could tell it was Burton is because it was 3-hole.
That, and it just said, and so that was like us saying we want this pro level board, but we just wanted it to be kind of cool and not be somebody's name. Like I didn't want to write, somebody else. I didn't want my name on it. Yeah. I just thought it was cooler to just have a rad board that was just called, and we came up with the name Custom. It's like, it's called the Custom.
Cool. So cool.
And it just kind of happened, and then I got to work with the designers at Burton to design that board. They were the smart ones, and I was just riding it and going, yeah, this one works, this one doesn't work, that nose feels too soft. I'm just riding, telling them what I felt. So it was like that surfer shaper relationship, but it was in a snowboard environment.
Yeah, I mean that's also a tricky thing. A lot of people will just adapt and be like, oh, yeah, it's good, dude.
Oh, I can adapt too.
For sure, we can adapt, but I mean, like, you have that Princess and the Pea thing going on, where you're like, oh no, I can feel some stuff.
And I learned a lot in those years. The designers at Burton, all the people that worked there, Jake was awesome at just like listening, like how's this, and not even just product, but like all kinds of stuff, listening to the riders, which was great. Like JG from Burton, that worked for Burton for a long, long time. I learned a lot about how to feel. He kind of almost taught me how to like feel what I'm feeling,
Yeah.
And that story of the Custom, I went down to New Zealand, and that was the summer in '94, and we talked about it before, and we made a bunch of prototypes. He did, and I had like 14 boards and 2 board bags, and I remember flying down to New Zealand in '94 in like August, and he was down there testing a bunch of other stuff, and he like broke his leg. And so he's like laid up in the cast in the lodge at somewhere in Wanaka or something. And there was nobody down there then.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
And I remember like getting there. I'm like, well, it's winter time, I'm like Southern California, it's sandals, and I show up in New Zealand and it's
shorts
full
and
winter.
sandals.
This is sick. And so I spent, I don't know, 2 weeks down there riding different boards, and that was the Burton Custom. We went through all these different prototypes basically. And he was in the lodge like it was a broken leg, like taking notes, and I'd come back in and I'd tell him like, oh, this one feels like this, and this one feels this way, and this blah, blah, blah. And there were all these little changes that he understood way more than I did.
Yeah.
You know, but I was just feeling, oh, this one feels like this, that one feels like that, blah, 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 and whittling it down to the 2 or 3, and then we finally came back with one, and like, that's the one, and then we built that one, and that was the first custom.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you still go down with somewhere on, or does the engineering crew still make that many prototypes, or do they do a lot more modeling with a computer now?
It's more refined now for sure. It's less like,
because that's a lot.
Yeah.
14 protos.
It's less like trial and error, you know.
Yeah.
That was pretty different because it was like we're playing with like nose lengths and flex in the nose, and that was kind of one of the first boards that had like a twin flex. It was totally directional snowboard, but the tail and the nose was the same flex.
Same, yeah.
You know, because I was riding backwards and forwards a lot, and I didn't want the same shape like a twin. I wanted the feeling the same, but you know, so the flex was a big thing. I think I remember down there, and it was variable snow down there. It was like powder, you know, fresh powder, and then on the groomed runs, track powder, and jumps and side hits and stuff. And back then there weren't really powder boards. I wanted a board that I could do anything on, and I was trying to, you know, I was just becoming a pro snowboarder and trying to keep up with other pro snowboarders. I'm like, dude, I want a board I can do anything on, and go hit jumps and go ride the half pipe, and you know, starting to do handrails and all this stuff. I wanted that board.
And how much has that board changed over
I mean,
years?
it really hasn't. I mean, the nose shape's changed a little bit, which doesn't really matter, you know, but materials have changed. Obviously there's a channel on it and things like that, but
it's pretty much the same
chassis
board.
of that board and the math in that board is the same as it was.
So
basically.
cool.
It's
It was ahead of its time, really, because it's still the standout. All
it's
around
still our
the
best selling
freestyle
board for sure.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about snowboard stuff to people, and that's kind of the board that you kind of start talking about. And then if somebody has a, you know, different riding style, you can go to that way, or you know, go towards twin tips or whatever, or go towards more powder specific things, or there's all kinds of boards now. But that's been a great board, you know, for Burton, I know. And it was just through trial and error, and there wasn't really anything like that at that time, sort of, you know.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the first time the conversations came up about split boards at Burton and your involvement with that?
That might be a long conversation.
The Coles notes on that. What did you think of split boards when you first
well, I
saw
thought
one?
so I forget what year it was. Probably 96, 5 maybe, something like that. And I was living in Utah. I moved out there. Shannon lived in Utah, and I was living actually at Tina Bassage's house. I rented a bedroom for her, and I was like, oh, this is sick. I'm getting into backcountry snowboarding. Because Craig's like, you know, a mentor of mine, Craig Kelly, and he's, you know, leading me into the backcountry, you know, and I'm trying to learn about the backcountry, and I'm hiking around Brighton and all these other places, and I'd see these skiers. I'm like, what is that? I didn't even know what it was. I just see these zigzags going up, and then they were wiggling down this thing. I'm like, that's kind of weird, you know? And then I was in Salty Peaks, and I don't know if you remember Brad Chaffel.
Yeah.
So he worked in there, and I went in there to tune a board or something like that, and there was like a split board, a volley split board. I'm like, wow, check that out. And he's like, yeah, it's like some demo thing. I'm like, wow. And he's like, you should try it. I'm like, really? And I picked it up. It was all heavy, and I tried it. And I remember I went to Brighton, and where I used to snowshoe, and I took that split board out, and I was like, this is insane. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I'm going up on the same thing I'm riding down on, and I don't have to carry my board on my back and all this stuff. And it worked. It was heavy and kind of crude and stuff, but it would totally work. I'm like, I got like 3 runs in. I'm like, this is insane. And then I think that day I called JG at Burton. I'm like, dude, we gotta make a split board. He's like, well, no, you know, blah blah blah. And it took probably a year to talk him into like even making a board. He would make a board and cut it down the middle.
Yeah.
And then he would like basically make me a custom split board. I put volley stuff on it. I'd take it into Brad at Salty Peaks, and he'd put volley stuff on it. And you know, there was other people split boarding, obviously, There's this guy Cowboy. I don't even remember.
Yeah,
Copenhagen. In Utah, I'd see him, but you know, I was like just stoked on it. I was like, this is insane because I like riding powder, and I'm like, this is just awesome. Like it's just relaxing. You can hike, and it's easy. And like I said, the main thing was like I don't have to carry my board. I'm going up on the same thing I'm coming down on, and I don't know. It just opened up this whole new thing in Utah. I learned a lot about that traveling in the backcountry in Utah, and then probably 3 years. JG was we started making boards with edges for me, but they were they were Burton custom graphics on the bottom, so nobody knew. Like I had some shots in what was it? Let me think. TB 6, 7
on a split board,
and 8 that nobody knows. You know,
wow.
and then because it just had the normal board graphic on it, you know, and then what happened? Basically, I talked him into it, and some designers at Burton were like, okay, let's do this, and we started like developing it. And there was actually a designer we hired from Black Diamond to help with the interface, and we designed the interface. Like the board was easy; it was a custom 64, basically.
Yeah.
But I was like, I want people to know I'm riding a splitboard. So I wanted one ski red and one ski yellow.
Oh wow!
And that's why that graphic was like that. I'm like, I want people to know. And then we worked on the interface system, you know, and produced it. And I rode that prototype one, and that was what was that movie, TB9. And I told Mike Hatchett, I'm like, hey, dude, I'm gonna film this whole. He saw me riding a splitboard. He knew it worked. And I'm like, I'm gonna film my whole part on the splitboard. And he's just like, no, you're not, dude. No, you know. And the team manager at the time at Burton was like, dude, you know, like, don't do that. But I was like, I just knew that like it worked really well, and nobody really believed it worked really well.
Was this with the Burton interface?
Yes.
Or with the new Burton interface too?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a prototype version, but it was that metal kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you had to like mount a normal binding on it.
Yeah.
Remember that? So it was that, and I don't know really why. I did it to prove a point, basically, that they worked.
Yeah.
Because nobody believed that they worked. I'm like, I'm gonna hit jumps, and Kevin Jones and the other guys I was filming with were like making fun of me, you know, like, dude, what are you doing? And I don't know. I just believed in it. You know, I wanted to like hit jumps and jump off cliffs and do 540s and stuff, whatever on that thing, and show that like this thing works. It's not for that.
Yeah.
It's not for hitting jumps and stuff, but you can do that.
Wow.
You know, and I want to show like this thing works. And really, for riding a splitboard, you're riding POW, and they totally work, as you know.
Yeah.
And everybody knows, like, so that's kind of was my involvement in it and my story with splitboarding, you know.
So you probably had a lot of miles on the splitboard before Craig even got one?
Oh yeah. He was super into like at that time designing, I don't know what years, that was 98, 7, something like that. He was super into like boat holes and hull design. Like before 3D. He was super into like riding POW and obviously, and he was into these boards, and he had concepts in his brain, you know, and then I went on a trip to North Cascade Heli with Craig, and we stayed in this yurt, and that was the first time that JG made another split board for him, and we gave it to Craig at that play. Joe Curtis was on that trip.
And were you on Burton interfaces or Volet at that point still?
No, that was Burton. No, that wasn't Burton.
That was
Volet.
Yeah.
That was before I filmed for TB9. Yeah.
Still,
so that
still
was
super cool.
That was
they were building
yeah,
some.
Yeah. I think I remember that now. That's a good point, because Craig's board had the supermodel graphic on it.
Oh yeah.
Or whatever. So I remember that. Yeah. And he just, I mean, dude, Craig got it.
Well, of course.
Yeah. He was just stoked, dude. Didn't shower for a week in the yurt, and he's just granola and just getting after it, you know. And he was psyched. It was cool to see him just like get totally into it, you know. And then he was, you know, he moved in, did a bunch of stuff, but pretty cool.
That's cool.
He loved it. Yeah.
Oh, he loved it. Yeah. Well, not too many things he did halfway. Like,
no, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
He got a little bit into something. He got deep into it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah. So.
any other like old equipment stories that like click in your head is like, oh, this was cool, or like the first time you and Jake got in an argument about something? Or...
Old equipment stories, like, I mean, the custom was a big one, the splitboard, but I remember I was a rep for Burton and when the 3D disc binding came out. And Andy Latz, who was a designer at Burton, and he went on to start Nixon watches and Chad Denan and stuff, but he, brilliant guy. He drew that on like a napkin of a pizza bar thing, like the concept of that disc with the 3D thing. Yeah. And I remember that was pretty crazy. And so, because at that time it was like I was selling boards when I was a rep, and we were selling there was 5 screws in the thing. Yeah. And there was only like 2 stance options. Yeah. Like your front foot was one, and then you had in the back foot you had 2 options. I remember it was like 19 or 20 inches or something like that. And then I think that was 91, right? 92 maybe. I remember that science catalog, Burton catalog. Yeah, yeah. That was the first year, I believe, of the disc binding. I remember selling it. I remember like trying to talk retailers into like believing in this.
Yeah, and 4-hole came along right
kind of
at the same time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that was a big change in snowboarding.
I remember it was just, who's got the proprietary thing that's going to work. Yeah, it's Tom Sims and I were talking, and with the plastic not being quite as great, didn't have the nylon components and stuff. Certainly not any glass or carbon. Yeah, we're like, the discs are too small, man. They're not. Everything's going to flex and break. Stuff, so we went 4x5. So they were 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters apart. Did it for 1 year. I mean, dude, and then we got forced into 4x4.
Yeah, but like half my career, I used to bring binding parts in my backpack in the backcountry. I remember that. Like, like high backs and straps would break. And heel. Like I remember like having like base plates like in my backpack.
Whoa.
Because like if you went out in the backcountry, you're like out in the backcountry filming, and you break a base, you're like, dude, this sucks. So you gotta have spare parts on you.
Crazy.
Like your own pit crew kind of thing. But
crazy.
I mean, then bindings started getting better and better and better, and they're crazy now. But the binding thing was big. That year, I think it was 91, 92 or something like that, which when the disc binding changed everything because it allowed you to get your stance, your width.
Yeah. I mean, in 91, I was still
91. You were only
ski screwing bindings into my like K2 Dan Donnelly. There were no inserts. Right. Just thicker glass in the spots for. Right. Yeah. We were using.
And I was riding Bear Mountain, and everybody's in the freestyle. I was like, Brian Iguchi was there, and Brian Thien, and Neil Drake, and there's so many guys there that were ripping, and they are all like T-nutting their stance wide, and that was a big thing because that was like the first Snowboard Park, and it was just a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. In the early '90s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
A lot.
Crazy stuff.
It is completely crazy. Thinking back and looking back, and then at the same time, we were talking about this earlier. Certain things like really haven't changed that much. Like binding still got a high back. The boot, they're sweet looking and they're waterproof and they flex right and such. And they're warm. Mm-hmm. Still kind of look like a Sorel with a ski boot liner. Which I don't know if you ever used that.
No, like my first boots were pretty good. They were like Burton freestyle boots with the Dale boot liner.
Yeah, which were actually pretty sweet.
I didn't have to live through that stuff.
Oh yeah, oh man, it was brutal. the first year without the ski boot liners, when we all were just using felties and like horrible, just like buckle in like seatbelt buckles practically. Like it was unbelievably painful. Yeah. It's
come a long way for sure.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much for coming and sitting down and talking with us. The good news is
we're not product geeks, so it's fun talking.
So we could do this for hours. And the good news is we're not done. Yeah. So we're gonna ride tomorrow.
We're gonna ride tomorrow.
So we'll avoid the chocolate chips and stuff that are out there. It's it's kind of early season here.
I told you, keep it in first gear.
Yeah, it's tough for me. That's tough for me.
Keep it in first gear.
Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. Right on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, folks. Again, Dave Downing, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Here we are with Dave Downing, day number 2 up here at Sunshine Village in Banff. And I'm just riding with Dave at a mini trade show here, showcasing some of next year's gear. We'll talk about that later. Got too many good stories with this guy first. Good morning.
Yeah, Fozz.
That's like mandatory stuff right there, right?
Coffee.
had great chats last night about cool snowboard history, and we got a few minutes here on the gondola.
That was fun, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because this will probably be our most quiet lift ride. Tell me about, because this is sort of where there was one spot we didn't go deep enough on. TB4, I believe, trip to Alaska with Johan.
No, it was the Johan story.
Johan
that
story.
Was TB5.
Okay, TB5. Well, I don't know how you keep those straight because there were a lot of them.
They're numbered. It's pretty easy.
Well, yeah, but how do you remember which correlates with which?
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was TB5 we were talking about last night. So, Johan Olafson and myself and Victoria Jalouse went to Alaska for my first time and Johan's first time. And Johan was just like a full-on freestyle freak back then, you know, like and he was riding twin tips. And you like this part of it, the story is like he was riding twins and he didn't want to ride anything else. He just wanted to ride twins because he was from, you know, Scandinavia, half pipe ripper, you know, road switch all the time. And then, you know, he's out in Tahoe with us with Hatchet and he's riding stuff. And Eric Koch, the team manager at the time, like didn't have a twin with a new graphic. So he's like, here, just ride this board. He sends him a freaking supermodel. And Johan was pissed. He's like, this board, I can't ride this, Eric, blah, blah, blah. And like, I remember at Mike's garage, he like spray painted it because it was like some weird color. And he was so bummed. And that was the only board he had. And like, he started riding that board. It was a supermodel. And I think it was like a 60 or something. I don't know what it was. But we started going out in Tahoe and it was just like landing stuff, jumping off stuff. It was just like free riding, you know. And then he took that board to Alaska with me, and that was my first time and Johan's first time. Victoria's been there before, but it was like this new heli, you know, it was like me and Johan and Victoria and Mike Hatchett, and then the other heli was Tom Bird, like Tex Davenport, Matt Goodwill, and Tom Day.
Like
You know, and those are like those guys
kids.
are gnarly, you
Yeah.
know, and me and Johan were just like, I don't know, well, that looks fun, and Johan was totally like, he was just like, oh, look at that looks real cool, and like he would just go up and just rip it. Mike and I were like, what is going on? There's this one shot, actually, I didn't tell you about this last night, but in TB5, there's a shot of me and Tom, it wasn't Tom Day, who was it? It was Doug Coombs, actually, who passed away. We're up in the top of this peak, and we're looking down, and Johan drops down this spine, and we thought he was just gonna ride down the spine. He gets there on the spine, he's like spins off the end, and we're like, what? And I was just like, dude, he must have, what happened? And he lands, and then I hear like a minute later, Mike's on the radio just screaming, like, oh my God. He did like a backside 3 off this spine. It was like a 40-foot cliff, you know? And we're like, what the heck? You know, like he had no idea because he didn't like scope it at all. And he just like does this backside 3 off this spine. It's in the movie, it's crazy. And that's how Johan rode that whole trip. It was just like nuts. Like to see it with my own eyes was the craziest thing. That part stands out in history, but I'll look back on that. I know when I'm on my deathbed.
That was all
that
like,
was nuts.
that was all a first. And from what I remember, like a lot of those, like you put together like an all-star Johan reel.
Yeah.
It stands up today.
That's in the best of TB series. That's the whole best of. But that part in TB5 when he was in Alaska was nuts, dude. Like it was like, and there's stuff that we didn't put in the movie that was just crazy. The free runs, it was just like he was just nuts. Like just had no plan. Like I'm a pretty planned out guy. I'm like, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna do this, hey Mike, I'm gonna ride that spine, I'm gonna do this, and he's just like, oh, I'm gonna go up over there and come down, and you're just like, what are you gonna do? And you just, you know, have to shoot him like wildlife, you know. He was just like a goat, mountain goat just coming down. You have to just point the camera at him. Like he was unbelievable.
And then what did he change that supermodel or did that? Because
he started riding that, and then he had a pro model, you know, which was like a supermodel. Then he was all into it, like a directional snowboard and stuff. He was totally into it, you know. So he rode supermodels for a while. So that's what changed.
That's what got him into directional.
Yeah. He went from a twin to that, and it was just like lights out.
Sick. Do you remember what like length boards you guys were riding back then?
Those were like 160s. Yeah, like 160s. I in Alaska I would ride like a 64.
We're not getting out here.
No, we're not.
No.
So another thing on that trip, on the Alaska trip, TB, but like it's kind of, I think it's the last shot in that part, in my part TB5 was I almost died basically. Like
let me think. What happened? Mike was looking at this face, and Johan just did this crazy thing over here, and I was up top, and I didn't really look at this face, and Mike was like talking to us, on the radio, and he's like, "There's these 2 cliffs." Like, "Oh yeah, I saw those 2 cliffs on the way up," and I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then I saw it. I think I looked at Victoria had a Polaroid because we used to take Polaroids of the thing. So I looked at the Polaroid. I'm like, "Okay, I see where I'm at. I see the cliffs. Cool." Okay. And it was like a 10-footer to like a 20-foot cliff or 30-foot cliff, whatever. And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I'm riding down, and it was all good. I get to I jump off the cliff, the first cliff. I land on this. It was like a little ramp, and I land. And it was just like there was like an under frozen rock or something. And I landed. I was just about to go off, and it just went tumbled me. It just like spun me like that, and I'm just flipping in the air off the second cliff. And you see in the movie, I'm just upside down, spinning around, and I landed like 6 inches from like a huge rock on my face, and my goggles blew out, and I had like a black eye. I mean, I was like this close to the actual rock. I hit the frozen snow with my face first, and I would have died for sure. So it was like I was like that close. You see in the movie, it's like pretty gnarly. I remember that I was just like rattled, and kind of emotional. And then we got back in the heli, and I was just kind of tripping, And then I remember I like we went back up, and then Johan was like went to go do something, and I'm like, I gotta just go do something. And then I went and did another line, filmed it, because I had to just get back on the horse, Like I was pretty rattled. And then, that was the closest I've ever been to dying. That was on the same trip. But it was amazing trip.
I can't.
I mean, and it's like that up there, I mean, you could kind of die at any moment, but, and it wasn't even like the craziest thing, It was like something that I've landed on frozen stuff before, and I blew out my ankle actually in Utah, like going off a jump and landing on a rock that I didn't know was under there. So there's always that danger, where it's like a hidden danger you don't even think about. So, yeah, but that TB5 trip was phenomenal. 14 days straight. That's what I was telling you last night at dinner. 14 days straight in Alaska, and it was POW all the way to the road every day.
And blue.
Bluebird every day. And then, I mean, I've been back since then, and it was never like that.
Yeah.
I get like 2 days, and you're in the hotel for like 7 days, and just snowing and stuff. So that was pretty cool. First trip to Alaska, 14 days straight. Heli. I didn't ever even wear my ski clothes. I didn't tell you that last night. We get there, and we were like in our snowboard gear, and we get to the hotel, and I, take our transceivers off, all our stuff, lay down, sleep, get up, put it back on, go so the heli again. So, like, it was just 14 days, just like boom, boom, boom. Super cool. Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah, you want a lottery ticket on that one.
Oh,
in many ways,
yeah,
eh?
for sure.
Like, crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right. One thing we want to talk about today a bunch is just the evolution and what you've been like envisioning for snowboard gear with Burton. Like, what has excited you? Where did you see, even if it was 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, where did you
It's
see?
not like
where
it's not like
stuff
my
has to go?
vision. It's I would say it's Burton's ethos or whatever. It's comes from Jake, I would say. But Burton's pretty into designing and developing product to make your snowboarding experience better. Whether that's comfort, I mean, maybe it's performance if you're that high level rider, or just making your life better, more comfortable, warmer, keep your hands warm, like all that stuff's pretty important. It's not just making a product and putting cool color on it and making it sell. Selling is great, but making it have your snowboarding experience better. So that's kind of what we're into. Whether it's outerwear, magnets, like that's pretty killer,
Yeah.
Like, so just making your life better, easier, more comfortable. It's pretty important.
What about, I know you're adaptable and you can ride just about anything that Burton makes. You could go and ride on it and have fun.
Well, I like.
But what do you select?
I like to
always
ride.
want to know
I
what
like
you
to
select
ride really
personally.
easy to ride boards. A lot of people. Oh yeah, you were a pro snowboarder. Blah blah blah. I'm like, I love soft boots. I love super soft boards, like soft between the feet. I like sensitive things where I can feel it. You know, like that's what personally for me. Like that's what I like. I've always liked that. So I don't like. You know, I talk to customers all the time. They're like, I need a performance boot. I need the stiffest boot. I'm like, really? Like, why? You want to be just in pain all day or what? Like, they don't really have a reason. They think it's performance, but it can be totally. Like you, Mark, might like a stiffer boot than me or certain things for your performance. But for me, I like soft. I like to be able to like move my feet around and stuff. So, you know, I'm pretty into softer boards, smaller boards. I ride pretty small boards, 52s. 56s. Well, let's go take a run. Let's go take a run.
We're getting out of here anyway, so super cool. Great story, great Gandhi stories, man. There's one good thing about the Sunshine Gondola. You can like tell stories on the way out. Thank you.
Thanks again, friends, for all the support. We really appreciate it. Without you guys watching, none of this stuff happens. So Fawcett's been on the road a bunch, bringing us these remote episodes, which has been fantastic. But I also want to thank our sponsors and welcome a new sponsor. James Brand is officially on board with us. Coulter, thank you so much, man. We're excited and appreciate the support, of course. As always, we're brought to you by Cole Headwear and BALDFACE Lodge and Tribute Board Shop. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you guys on the next one.